Hi and welcome. Mariam here with Anne, the Fruitarian, sharing about how to live a more nourishing, energizing, and prosperous life, as I like to say on this YouTube channel. So, Anne, hi, welcome. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, and thank you for inviting me to share some of my experiences with you.
Yeah, great. You're so welcome. So today I'd like to share with you and share with the people how was it to live a fruitarian life, and especially how is it to go through a fruitarian pregnancy. So would you like to share first what is being a fruitarian, fruitarianism, for those who don't know, please?
Yeah, so a fruitarian diet is a diet whereby your staple food is always fruit. I eat mostly fruit. Very occasionally, I might have some greens or some nuts, but for the most part, it's fruit. And I eat raw fruit. I think some people do have some cooked fruit in their diet, but for me, raw fruit is always better than cooked fruit. So basically, it's a diet comprised of mainly fruit.
Okay, and how did it all started for you?
Well, I was vegan for ethical reasons, and what I found when I became vegan, which I was really not expecting, was that my health improved so much. The very day after I gave up all animal products, and I wasn't expecting that. I just did it purely for ethical reasons. So it was a real kind of surprise, but a pleasant surprise to notice that my health improved, my breathing, my fitness levels. And so from that moment on, I became very interested in finding out the connections between what we put in our bodies and how we feel. And so I tried various types of vegan diet, a whole food vegan diet, macrobiotic vegan diet, kind of a sprouts and wheatgrass type vegan diet. And then I tried the fruitarian diet. I went to a talk by a local man I knew, and he was a fruitarian, and he was just a good advert for the diet. He was lively and had good energy and had very good health. And I thought I'd like to try this. And I was actually pregnant at the time with my eldest son, so I didn't go into it straight away. I did a transitional diet over a period of about a year. And I've really just felt so well on the fruitarian diet and healthy and happy and ethically ticks all my boxes as well as environmentally. So I've never really looked back, and I've been on a fruitarian diet for 28 years now.
Wow, amazing. So you also went through a fruitarian pregnancy. Would you share how and why, or why and how? Maybe it's better.
Well, my first pregnancy, I was in transition to a fruitarian diet. And then 12 and a half years later, I'd been fruitarian for 12 and a half years. So it just made sense to me that that's the diet that I would eat when I was pregnant. And I appreciate that everybody is different. Everybody has differing needs. And I know some people are on a raw vegan diet and they find it more challenging when they're pregnant, whereas other people, find it easy. So for me, I just thought, yes, I really want to carry on being on a fruitarian diet during my pregnancy, because I do believe that as long as you get all your nutrient levels met, it's a very, very healthy diet. I did supplement with B12 throughout my pregnancy and also in the early months of breastfeeding, because I think it's really important that we don't get B12 deficient, especially during a pregnancy, which may affect the growing baby. And my tastes changed slightly. I became more attracted to the savoury fruits than normal, so more attracted to avocados and cucumbers and zucchini and that kind of thing. But I still ate a lot of sweet fruit as well. And my health was very, very good throughout my pregnancy. I worked until I was 8 months pregnant. I didn't put on any extra weight, only 10 kilos for the whole pregnancy. I didn't have any problems with swelling or backache or anything at all. I just felt very, very well throughout the pregnancy. And I felt almost as if I was ramped up somehow, because when you're pregnant, your endocrine system, obviously your hormonal system changes, and it kind of, all your female hormones really sort of increase. And I think if you're healthy and the endocrine system is functioning optimally, pregnancy, you can feel really, really good indeed. And I just had a great pregnancy. I exercised a lot. As I said, I worked till I was 8 months pregnant. I had lots of energy. I slept well. So for me, you know, the fruitarian diet did work very well during the pregnancy, and I had blood tests to make sure the important nutrients were okay and met the required levels. So I did supplement with B12 to be on the safe side. Folic acid is another very important nutrient that women need when they're pregnant to help prevent spina bifida in the developing baby. And with both my pregnancies, my folic acid levels were off the charts, really, really high. So I didn't supplement because they were so high anyway. And folic acid is destroyed by heat. So if you're on a raw diet, then you're going to be getting a lot of folic acid. So a raw diet can be very useful in pregnancy to ensure that you're getting high levels of folic acid. So yeah, I progressed through the whole of my pregnancy like 100% raw and on fruit, mostly fruit. I did have some sprouts and I did have some greens, but it was mostly fruit. And I increased the amount of vegetable fruits compared to what I normally had, but otherwise it was a very similar diet to what I'd been eating for 12 and a half years, because when I was pregnant with my second child, I'd been on the fruitarian diet for 12 and a half years.
Okay, you said something very interesting, savory fruits. So that's something people, I think when you say you're a fruitarian or anyone says I'm a fruitarian, we think about how sweet of a diet it can be and how much sugar we can actually the sugar intake in our diet. Could you explain the difference? What is actually a fruit and how can you actually get savory fruits? How does it work?
Yeah, well, botanically, a fruit is defined as the fruiting body of a plant that contains seeds. So anything really that contains seeds is considered a fruit. So pumpkins, squashes, zucchini, avocado, cucumbers, tomatoes, bell peppers, anything like that, even though they taste savoury, is botanically defined as a fruit. And so you can have, you know, if you're getting cravings for a more savoury meal, you can either eat mono, so eat just one type of savoury fruit, or you can make kind of a salad, you know, and have peppers, avocado, cucumbers, a bit of zucchini, and make it into a salad. And that can be useful because some people do get quite strong savoury cravings, and that can be one way to satisfy those cravings while still having a mostly fruit diet.
Okay, and then thank you. You spoke about the nutrients and how you were okay with folic acid and how it's important to supplement with B12. For you, did you do more checkups? Did you talk with a doctor? Did you do all these things before choosing to go through a fruitarian pregnancy? How was your relationship, shall I say, with the nutritional aspect and your confidence that everything would be fine?
Well, before I got pregnant, my health was very, very good. I was 37 and I conceived quite quickly after trying to get pregnant. So, you know, obviously my hormonal system was working well and I was fertile. And when I was pregnant, obviously I went for the tests. I had blood tests and, you know, regular checkups, you know, with the doctors and with the nurses to make sure everything was progressing well and everything was fine. I didn't put on a lot of weight. With both my pregnancies, I'm normally about 50 kilos and I went to 60 kilos. What I noticed with the second pregnancy that I put on 6 kilos really, really quickly. So I went from 50 kilos to 56 kilos in a couple of months really. And then after that, there was very little you know, sort of weight put on, only another about 4 kilos. But yes, I had all my blood pressure taken and everything, and all my tests were fine, and I was healthy, and I really, really enjoyed the pregnancy. And I think that was a blessing for me because I know a lot of women don't necessarily enjoy pregnancy. They really want to have kids, but they find the whole 9 months as quite stressful or unpleasant or uncomfortable. Whereas for me, the whole pregnancy was really enjoyable and, you know, one of the nicest periods in my life. So I feel very blessed that the diet that I chose enabled me to have a very beautiful pregnancy. You know, I feel very blessed to have experienced that.
Wonderful. How about the first trimester though? So many women say, I go through fatigue, nausea, it's hard, I can't do anything, can't work out or even work. How is it for you?
It was fine for me. I haven't had morning sickness with either of my pregnancies. The only thing I really noticed changing was I became more attracted to savoury fruits than I normally am. I was still attracted to sweet fruits, but I also had more of a taste for savoury fruits. So I just listened to my body and increased the amount of savoury fruits that I was having. But I was able to do everything I normally do. I walk a lot, I exercise. I was working as a massage therapist, which can be physically quite a demanding job. And everything that I normally do, I was able to do, and I was fine with it. My sense of smell did become more acute, and I think this sometimes happens to women when they're pregnant. So I avoided any smells that I didn't like, but that wasn't a problem really. It's just the nicer smells smell even nicer. So, you just need to make sure that you avoid any smells that, you don't like, I think, when you're pregnant, because that can trigger you feeling a little bit queasy or not so good. But thankfully, I was able to carry on with all my usual routines and not feel like pregnancy is a condition or an illness. It was something that was happening to me. I was experiencing it, and I really enjoyed every day experiencing my pregnancy and the changes that were happening every day. And it was just very, very special. And I was happy that I could continue with the diet that had worked well for me for the previous 12 and a half years during my pregnancy. But I also think that every woman needs to listen to her body, because some people are on a certain type of diet and they think, yes, I would really like to carry on with this diet while I'm pregnant, but it might not work. I do know women that have been on a high fruit diet and they found once they're pregnant, they can't eat a lot of fruit. They don't want to eat it. It makes them feel nauseous, or they're not attracted to it. So I think it's important every woman listens to her individual needs, and there's no rights, there's no wrongs, but you need to find what works for you. And that isn't always static. So even if you've been on a fruit diet for how many years, if something changes in your life, like pregnancy, you might find that some things aren't working anymore, and you need to reevaluate or reassess, what you're doing. And you don't have to do the same thing every day for the rest of your life. I think that's a very important part of any diet, to have faith in your diet, but not blind faith. So to have the faith backed up by knowledge and experience, to listen to your body as well and change if you need to change anything with your diet, and not beat yourself up and say, well, I really wanted to be on a fruitarian diet when I was pregnant, but I couldn't, I'm a failure, or that kind of thing. Because there's no, this diet is better than that diet. You find the diet that works for you, that ticks your environmental boxes, ticks your ethical boxes, and you go with that. And every day be aware that you may need to tweak things. You may need to eat more fat or more carbohydrate or more of one type of nutrient. But I think two very important things with a pregnancy are vitamin B12 and vitamin D. And I would suggest that women get those levels checked, because you can supplement. You can easily supplement with vegan supplements to ensure that you get sufficiency in those vitamins, because if you don't have sufficient B12 and you're pregnant, you could cause neurological damage in your developing baby. And vitamin D is very, very important for our immune system and for our hormonal system. You can get enough vitamin D from the sun if you live in a sunny environment. And luckily I was living in Australia with my second pregnancy, so I was able to get adequate vitamin D from the sun. But if you can't, I would suggest get your levels checked. If you know you want to get pregnant, if you're considering that you want to be pregnant, I would get your levels checked before you conceive. Folic acid, B12 and vitamin D. And then if any of them are low, consider either changing your diet in some way or supplementing. And it's probably better or more optimal to go into a pregnancy with all those three in good, sufficient levels before you conceive. Obviously, we don't always have everything planned. And if you find yourself pregnant and your levels are low, then consider supplementing or getting more sunshine in the case of vitamin D to make sure you give the optimal health for your developing baby.
All right. How about cravings then? You were talking about food and how a woman should follow her and her feelings and her intuition. How do you explain then you seem to not have been through any other cravings but savory fruits? But how would you explain other women sometimes who were fruitarian before the pregnancy go through other cravings and have to deal with that? How would you
Yeah.
explain, or how do you feel about your relationship with cravings while pregnant?
Thank you. Well, I think everybody is different and everybody's individual. And if you're pregnant and you're craving something, there's probably something rational behind that that your body needs. I've been very fortunate that I've always been able to access really good quality fruits during my 28 years on a fruitarian diet. And that to me is one of the very, very most important things. Because if we're not accessing really good quality fruit, we may not be getting the micronutrients that we need. Now, it's pretty easy to get macronutrients, which are proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Because macronutrients, as long as we're eating enough, and we can always add in things like durian or avocado to get more fat if we need it, it's not hard to get your macronutrient levels met. But micronutrients, we don't hear so much about. So micronutrients are your antioxidants, your vitamins, your minerals, the small nutrients. And they can be missing quite easily if we're not eating good quality produce. The produce that we eat is only really as good as the soil that it's grown in. And increasingly, soils are depleted of nutrition. And into the soils, we put artificial chemicals, artificial fertilizers, which only supply the soil with maybe sodium, potassium, and a few other nutrients. And so a lot of the trace elements may be missing. And if they're not in the soil, they're not going to be in the food you eat. So if you're not able to access really good quality, local, organic, wild, biodynamic or homegrown produce, you may be deficient in some of the micronutrients, even though calorie-wise and on a macronutrient level, you're meeting your required daily amounts. So it could be that some women are not getting sufficiencies in some of the micronutrients, and I think that can lead to cravings. I always think our body is working in our best interests. However we treat our body, whatever we do to it, whether we treat it kindly and give it what it needs, or whether we don't give it what it needs, it's always working in our best interests. And we might not understand that. So I think it's important to listen to cravings. If we're craving natural foods, if we're craving foods that aren't highly processed. But even if we are, when we're pregnant, it's a very special state and we're craving something that we wouldn't normally eat. We might look into that food and say, well, what is this food high in? What is it that might be missing in my diet that's in this food? And if it's a highly processed food that we'd rather not be eating, see if we can get those nutrients in a less processed or more wholesome food. But I do think it's important to listen to your own body while you're pregnant, because nobody else is going through your pregnancy. It's only you, and you really do know best. And if you are unsure and you're on a vegan diet, then maybe consult with a vegan dietitian or nutritionist, to get some ideas of what you could be doing to improve your diet. But again, always listen to it, and it might change. A lot of women find that the first 3 months are challenging, that they have cravings in those first 3 months, or they have aversions. They have aversions to foods that they previously loved. Again, I would say trust your body on that. If your body's really telling you strongly by feeling nausea or feeling a strong aversion to a food that you used to love, maybe it's not what you need right now. So I think it's very important to listen to your body, tune into it. And you can ask your body questions as well. Ask yourself questions, and your subconscious is always working away and it's processing things. So you might say to your body, well, why am I craving this? Or what do I need? And then sort of meditate on it, or just sort of not focus on it, and then the answer may come to you. But on the practical side, I would suggest getting some books, pregnancy books, looking at the nutrients you need, maybe specific vegan or raw vegan pregnancy books. Maybe consult with a nutritionist, because it is very important that you get your micronutrient needs met when you're pregnant, especially things like iron, calcium, and B12, and folic acid, and vitamin D. But yes, I would never negate anybody's cravings. I think we're all different. We all experience things differently. And I think it's very important to appreciate and respect what you're going through rather than comparing it to someone else, saying, oh, look, somebody else had this pregnancy and they had that and they were fine. What am I doing wrong? Well, you're not doing anything wrong. You've just got different needs to that other person.
Sure, thank you. You talk a lot about high quality fruits. Did you pick the environment you live in due to your diet, or was it the opposite? You chose your diet because you were living in an environment that was more inclined to have high quality fruits? Could you share about that? And how can people maybe who live in the city have access to high quality fruit? Should they think about changing place, or how far?
Well, for the first 12 years, 11 or 12 years of my fruit diet, I lived in the UK. And so the UK isn't necessarily the best place for actually fruit in terms of local fruit. It is, we get some great fruit there, some berries and some apples and pears in season, but not all year round. So I think you have to make it work for you where you're living. And if you really want something, you will make it work. Now I live in Australia. It is more conducive to a fruit diet, but I didn't choose Australia just because of the fruit, but that was a real advantage. So going back to being in England, so I discovered the Fruitarian diet while I was in England, and the ways that I made that work were one important thing was to form a buying group. So I was living in Leicester and we formed an organic fruit buying group. There was about 5 or 6 of us, and we were able to source through like a wholesaler really, really good quality fruit, and it was just so beautiful. We got beautiful mangoes from Egypt and sweet grenadilla from Africa, and just the most delicious apricots from Italy. So from all over the world, we were getting really, really good quality fruit, which would be high in micronutrients. And that was very helpful, not just because we were getting our nutrient needs met, but because it tasted so good. And you need to really enjoy what you're doing. You can't eat a fruit diet and the fruit's not good quality and it doesn't taste good. It won't work. So I think that's one thing that people could do, is to form an organic fruit buying group, because you buy in bulk. It makes the fruit cheaper, and also instead of just being able to afford 1 box a week, if there's 6 or 7 of you, you can maybe get 6 or 7 boxes, so you get a better variety of fruits. Also try and get organic whenever possible. It's not always possible, and sometimes the organic fruit isn't of better quality. You might look in the supermarket, you might see organic grapes and non-organic grapes, and the actual non-organic grapes are of better quality. So just because something's organic doesn't mean per se it's going to always be better, but generally it tends to be better. And the reason it tends to be better is because it's picked riper, and also the soil that it's grown in tends to have a lot more nutrition in it, and it's also more likely to be grown with love and care, all of which, helps improve the nutrient content of the fruit. So choosing organic, biodynamic is really, really good. I think biodynamic, if you can access it, it's almost a step above organic. I've always had really, really good quality biodynamic fruits. They're not widely available, but if you ever can access them, I would choose them. Another option is growing some of your own fruit. In the UK, there's still a lot of fruit we can grow. In the summer, we can grow berries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, red currants. And the berries are very useful because berries are very high in micronutrients. Often, berries are also very high in calcium. And calcium is a very important nutrient for women, and especially if you're pregnant. Blackberries are one of the most nutritious fruits on the whole planet, and blackberries grow wild in a lot of the UK. So I would suggest when it's blackberry season, make sure they're properly ripe. If you pick a blackberry, it should just come off, and when you turn it over, the place where it's come off should be pale purple in colour, not white, when it comes off the plant. And with blackberries, you can freeze them. You could also dry them if you've got a dehydrator, but if you get a lot when they're in season, which is really sort of from this time onwards for maybe another month, the blackberries are really good. pick excess and then freeze them, so that in the months when you've not got fresh fruit available, you can, defrost the blackberries. So foraging, mulberries as well you can get in the UK, or grow your own apples and pears and plums if you've got space to have trees. If you've got a greenhouse, you can grow tomatoes. You can also grow grapes in a greenhouse. Another option is to get an allotment, which is a really good option in the UK. It's where you rent a piece of land, and you pay quite a small amount, maybe about £10 a year, and you can grow your fruits and vegetables there. You can make sure you grow them organically, you put good compost into the soil. So there's lots of options you can do wherever you are, to ensure that you're getting good quality fruit. And look at the ethnic stores as well. The UK's got very many ethnic stores. The Pakistani, the Indian mangoes that you get are really delicious. You can also often get some organic fruits from some of the ethnic stores, also West Indian stores. So make the use of where you are. So the UK is very good for markets, for ethnic stores, allotments. And even if you just grow some microgreens and things on your windowsill or in your kitchen, they can just supplement the fruits and vegetables that you normally eat. So with Australia, moving to Australia, that was really good in terms of the fruit availability. I can get local fruit all year round, which I feel very blessed to be able to do, and I can eat with the seasons. But if you can't do that, you can form a buying group and you can get imported fruit, coming in throughout the year, and that's what helped me. Another option is to go away for a couple of weeks a year to get to a more sunnier climate, which will help you with vitamin D levels, and also will help with getting more nutritious fruit if you go to an area where there's fruit in season, say in the UK winter. So I found that can be very helpful as well.
Okay, so it seems like being strategic, organizing, and connecting with people helps a lot, right?
Yes. Yeah. And also networking with your fruit suppliers. If you go to a shop regularly, whether it's a small greengrocers or a bigger Whole Foods store, if you form relationships with the people that work there and you shop with them a lot, then they'll tend to find you good bargains, and they'll ring you up and say, "Hey, I've got some great custard apples in, or I've got some lovely persimmon," and they'll make sure you get the best fruit because they know you're a good returning customer, and they're not going to fob you off with any old rubbish. So I think making relationships with people, whether it's a wholesaler of organic fruit or just the local person at your local fruit shop, that can be really, really helpful. And you can get to know that person, form a relationship with them, and they'll look out for you because they know that you're a good customer.
Cool, thank you. How do you feel like your budget has changed, changing your diet, becoming fruitarian? I know so many people question this and are scared to even think about the diet just because of the budget.
I think obviously a budget's important, but when I started out as a fruitarian, I was a single mother in the UK with a very, very low income indeed, and I managed to get a lot of organic fruit, a lot of good quality fruit, to always feed myself and my child well on a very low budget. So I know it can be done because I've done it myself. Now I have a bigger budget, but even when I had a low budget, what you put as important to you, you will find you will attract into your life. Somebody once said to me, "You'll always find money for cigarettes," and they were a smoker. Now for me, I'll always find money for fruit because that's what I really love, and that's what nourishes me, and that's my addiction if you want. But yes, so I think it's important to have that intention. If you say to yourself, "I can't afford organic fruit," or "I can never find any good organic fruit where I live," you're putting that intention there and you're almost self-sabotaging. But if you say to yourself, "I can afford good organic fruit, I'm going to attract good organic fruit into my life," then you will start to find that you will get good fruit attracted into your life. And I very much believe that because I know that I have done that, and I have got good organic fruit. I have got great quality fruit on a very, very low income. I've always managed to eat well, but it has been a priority for me. And even when I've been busy, I've made time to go to several different fruit shops or several different supermarkets to get the best from each one. So it's a commitment in a way. If you really want to do it, you can, but it does take time and it does take energy, and I think you need to have that intention. Yes, I will attract the best quality fruit to my life. And in addition, the more you're attracted to something, the more it's attracted to you. So the more you enjoy beautiful produce, the more you respect it, the more you get excited about it, the more it will come into your life and people will gift it to you. You will be out walking and you'll suddenly see a beautiful tree with loads of figs on, or a grapevine, and you will notice that because that is what you're attracted to, and it will become attracted to you as well. So I really believe that. I believe that you need to put out positive intention in terms of getting good quality produce and to believe that you can afford it, because if you say I can't afford it, you're almost making that happen. And I think I can say that because I've been on a very low wage, probably, you know, like for the UK, one of the lowest wages, and still managed to eat good quality fruit and never go without.
Wonderful. Yeah, your example is very inspiring. If you could have done it being a single mom on a low wage, really most people can do it. Okay, let's go for the more precise question. How is a day in your life like on a fruitarian diet? So I would ask on a normal day, and then a pregnancy, like when you were pregnant, how was your day? In other words, what were you eating in terms of amount and time, and the quality of the type of product? Would you share that, please?
Yes, thanks. Well, a normal day, I would have like juicy fruit for breakfast. Now, I go on a run every other day, and I get up and I do work on the internet in the morning, and I like to do that before I eat. So I always eat after I run. So I will go do my run, do a couple of hours work, and then maybe have my breakfast maybe about 9 o'clock. And when I was pregnant and on a normal day, it would be juicy fruit in a mono meal that's in season. So that could be melons, it could be papaya, it could be pineapple, it could be persimmon. It really depends what's in season, and I have as much as I care for. So it might be a whole melon, it might be 2 papaya, it might be 1 papaya, and I never think you should have this amount. I never count calories. I eat as much as I want, and my body lets me know I've had enough of that now, and maybe I would have some more juicy fruit of a different type if I wanted, but usually it's just one type of juicy fruit. It might be mangoes, you know, if mangoes are in season. If I'm living somewhere where I'm not getting so much seasonal fruit, then I'll still try and get it relatively seasonal. Like in the UK, I would have melons for breakfast when the European melon season is on, and then, you know, maybe have a different type of fruit, you know, persimmon later in the year when the melons are finished. So I'll have juicy fruit, and then mid-morning, I might have some more juicy fruit. But when I was pregnant, I might have differed that by, I might have had, say, an avocado mono meal. So having a few more avocados, having that sort of maybe mid to late morning. And then, so having that earlier in the day. And then when I'm not pregnant, if I want avocados, I'll maybe have them around lunchtime. So maybe I'll have a mono meal of 2 avocados. And then with being pregnant, because I've already had the avocados a bit earlier on, I might have juicy fruit, you know, in a couple of hours later. And then not being pregnant, I'll have maybe another 1 or 2 meals of seasonal juicy fruit. I might have avocados. If I feel like avocados, again, I eat them mono. I just have maybe 1 or 2 avocados in a meal. And when I was pregnant, what I would tend to do was to have maybe more avocado and vegetable fruits in a salad for my last meal, for my sort of like late afternoon, early evening meal. So the way I eat is always mono, just about. With pregnancy, I had a few more like mixed salads. So I might have some tomatoes cut up with cucumber, cut up with, you know, a bit of zucchini and avocado. So that changed a bit. So I ate a bit less mono when I was pregnant, I think just to get those savoury fruits in, because I was desiring the savoury fruits. But usually it'll be mono meals, and I eat as much as I care for. I think on average I'd probably have about 15 pieces of fruit per day. And when I was pregnant, That's sort of like medium-sized pieces or small pieces of fruit. When I was pregnant, it didn't really change. The amounts I ate didn't really change, but I ate more savoury fruits. But when I was breastfeeding, that was when I ate a lot more. That was when I actually got a real hunger, and I felt I could eat maybe like 1.5 times as much as I normally would eat, the same type of meals, but more. But I never felt over full. I never felt stuffed. I mean, normally if I'd have eaten that amount when I wasn't breastfeeding, I'd have thought, oh, I like feel a bit full. But I never got that. It was like, I think breastfeeding, especially the first few months, you really do need to increase the amount of food that you eat, and you will get a hunger. And you also need to ensure that you are very well hydrated, because you're producing a lot of milk. So I think it's very important to drink a lot of water or juice if you're not having as much juicy fruit as can supply the amount of liquid that you need. I think, again, it's listening to your needs. And with breastfeeding, don't count calories. You can eat as much as you really can eat as much as you care for. It's very important. You're looking after your baby. You need to look after yourself and ensure that you're getting adequate amounts of fruit and get good quality stuff and feel that you deserve it, because you're producing milk. You really need to make sure that you're getting enough fruit and enough good quality fruit. You may find as well, if there's certain foods that you avoided when you were pregnant, you may find breastfeeding, you're eating more of the fruits and the vegetables that you normally ate. A lot of women who go off certain things when they're pregnant find that when they're breastfeeding, they get more of a taste for their previous diet.
Okay, so as you talk about breastfeeding, what kind of differences did you find then compared to being pregnant and fruitarian or not being pregnant? Like, as you said, you were eating more. Any kind of cravings or attraction for certain fruits, or?
Not so much when I was breastfeeding, as long as I got enough. But I did notice I got hunger more, and I had to make sure that I got, enough fruit in. I think that's very important. If you're breastfeeding, ensure that you've got a great supply of your favourite fruits, or find, if you've got a partner, make sure they help you out and ensure that you've got a good supply of fruits, because you will get hungry. And it's not nice being hungry when you're breastfeeding. You don't really want to get to that. You want to ensure that you've got plenty of ripe fruit. Make sure you get into organising and get, someone to help you, especially when you just had a baby and, it's a big job just looking after your baby. So if you can get anybody to help you with ensuring that, you're getting fruits in so that they're ripe, and you're not sort of like want an avocado and it's hard, or you want a banana and it's, green. But yes, I think it's really important to look after your needs and ensure that you get enough. And I think that's the thing, you do need to eat more when you're breastfeeding. You have a much bigger need for both micro and macronutrients. And I think that's the big thing. I didn't get any particular cravings, but I did. My appetite increased and I really enjoyed it. It was great because I could eat so much and I was really enjoying it. And that's the thing, if you're eating a diet that you enjoy and that's healthy, when you're breastfeeding, it's great because you can eat more than you normally do. So, yeah, that was good.
You bring the topic of space and storage, like how to store everything, especially if you're breastfeeding and you're on a fruitarian diet. Especially, how can you say for people who have not much space, when you were living in England?
If you haven't got so much space, I lived in a very small, terraced house when I was in the UK, so I didn't have a big pantry. I didn't have a lot of space. But I think you might need to go shopping more often. A lot of people do go shopping more often. If you've got a little baby to care for or children, get other people on board to help shop for you. You can also get online deliveries as well now, a lot more, and organic online deliveries, which is great, if you want to get more frequent deliveries of fruit. Airing cupboards are good as well in the UK. You can ripen avocados and bananas, put them in your airing cupboard. The sort of the stacking shelves are a good idea because they go upwards, where you can have mesh trays, which are a nice way of storing fruits and vegetables because they let the air flow. I think it's very important as well, if you have any fruit that's bruised or damaged, is to remove it and put it somewhere else, because fruit flies can be a real problem and they can breed up very quickly, but they only go on damaged or bruised fruit. So it's like going through your fruit every day, and if anything's overripe, moving it somewhere away, maybe putting it in a container where the fruit flies can't get it, or in a fridge, something like that, because that can be an issue, but they're not usually an issue. If fruit's perfect, they can't really get into it and they won't breed up. And, you know, organising, if you've got a fridge, organising your fridge. I actually lived in the UK without a fridge. I never had a fridge. I do in Australia because it's a lot hotter. And I'd buy melons, and if I only had half a melon, like a watermelon, I'd just sort of wrap something around it and keep it in the kitchen, because it was a very cold kitchen. It was a very old house and the kitchen was cold. So I managed without a fridge. Some people store things on top of their cooker if they don't use their cooker anymore, or even in their cooker, things like that. You can use it as a storage place for fruit. But I think you do need to be organised, and anything that's rotten or bad, you know, put it in the compost, and have a compost bin somewhere out of your house, because again, compost bins will attract fruit flies and things that you don't want in your house. And if you haven't got the space, maybe consider shopping more often, but be organised in terms of, if you like things like avocados, mangoes, papaya, things that ripen mostly after they're picked, and often it's better to get them hard, because if you get them really soft they can be overripe, and just have them on a rotation. So if you like avocados, buy them when they're hard, and buy them like 5 days in advance, especially if they've not been gas ripened. They might take 5 days to ripen, and just have them in rotation, so that, and you can put any ones that aren't ripe, you can put them in the airing cupboard, or put them in paper bags, and that helps them ripen. That helps to speed up the ripeness. Anything that's very ripe, if you have a fridge, put it in the fridge. Some people don't like to keep fruit in the cold, and I have lived without a fridge, so yeah, I can understand that as well. But just be organised with any damaged fruit, so that you don't get fruit flies, because once they start, there's a lot of them, and they just keep breeding and breeding, and that can be an issue, with storing a lot of fruits.
All right. Do you feel like you spend more time organizing, planning, storing, working on your fruitarian life than you did before, when you had a normal, shall I say, diet?
I think it's different. When I was on a macrobiotic diet, I spent hours cooking a day, because macrobiotic, everything is cooked from scratch. So I might spend 3 hours cooking, preparing, chopping, all that kind of thing. When I eat mono, I just eat it like it is. I might cut it in half and scoop it out. There's no real washing up. There's no preparing. There's no cooking. So the time that you save not doing those things, you can spend on maybe doing more shopping or organising your fruit, that kind of thing. I think it is more time consuming to cook than it is to eat a raw vegan diet, for me anyway, especially if you're eating like a whole food, plant-based diet, whereby you're preparing things from scratch, and that takes a lot of, washing, chopping, cooking. You're not just eating ready meals. So, it's it balances it out, I think. I think certainly cooking takes a lot more time, or it did for me, than eating mono fruit meals. You save a lot of time. Just, not having the preparation, not having the washing up afterwards as well.
Absolutely. How about sleep? So you sound like you wake up early and go to bed pretty early as well. Would you share about that?
Yes, I really like to get up early. So I aim to get in bed between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night, though more towards 9. And then I get up between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning. And that fits in very well with Australia, because Australia seems to be the kind of place where people do go to bed early, and people get up early. And when I first came here, the shops would all be shut very early. And I think, they open a lot later in the UK. But then when if you're up at 5 o'clock in the morning, there's a lot of people about, going running or walking their dogs. So that works for me. I find that I don't need as much sleep as I did when I ate a cooked diet. What I really like as well is that when I wake up, I feel really ready to go. I used to feel hungover almost on a cooked diet, even when it was a vegan cooked diet. Even when I didn't drink alcohol, I'd feel blurry and foggy in the morning. I'd need a cold shower or a shower to get me sort of woken up. But now I can get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I can start work, So I might get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, do 2 hours work, go for a run at 6 o'clock, come back at 7, make my son's packed lunch, do some more work. And I've got a lot of energy right early on in the morning. And I also think how you feel when you first wake up can be a good barometer of your health. I don't mean if you've had a particularly bad night or if you've been out late, but generally, how do you feel first thing in the morning? Do you feel like I can bounce out of bed, I can start my day, I don't need a cup of coffee to get me going, I don't need a shower to wake me up, I feel really bright and alert and well rested? And I think that is a good barometer of our general overall health, how we feel generally first thing in the morning, and also the quality of our sleep. Do we go to bed? We're nicely tired. We've done quite a bit of physical exercise in the day. We've had a good, fulfilling day. And we just go straight to sleep and we wake up well rested in the morning. I think, again, that's an indicator that what you're doing is working for you, that you're having good sleep, that you're not restless at night, and that you're not awake at night or you have insomnia. So I think for me, I do need less sleep. I think I need maybe 7 hours sleep in the winter months, 6 hours sleep in the summer. I don't need as much sleep in the summer, and I feel well rested. And I think part of that is that one of the biggest uses of energy in the body is digesting food. And if you have a lot of highly processed food, that takes a lot of energy. And especially if you have a big meal before you go to bed. So when you're asleep, a lot of your energy is needed to digest that food. And that can mean you need more sleep because that energy is depleting your natural energy levels, that energy taken away from digesting your food. If you eat a fruit diet and you finish eating maybe at 5 o'clock, then you've got a good few hours before you go to bed. By the time you've gone to bed, that fruit has all passed through your stomach. And so you're not expending energy while you're sleeping. You get restful sleep, nice dreams, and you probably don't need as much sleep. But that's for me. I mean, other people might need more sleep. I would never say to somebody, you have to have this amount of sleep. But I've definitely found for myself, I need less sleep. And when I do wake up, I feel great in the morning. I feel healthy and well and alert. And I can get going. I can get straight into work as soon as I wake up.
Was it the same during pregnancy, or did you feel like during being pregnant you needed more sleep?
I think sometimes during breastfeeding I needed more sleep, and I think also the first 3 months of the pregnancy I needed a bit more rest, but not that much more. I was still pretty active, but yes, and again I listened to my body because there's big changes, especially the first 3 months at your hormones, and your hormones dictate so much of how you feel. Women that get premenstrual syndrome, or they can be fine all month, and then just before their period or the week before their period, they totally change. And there's so much, these little tiny hormones that we can't really see, they can really affect how we feel. And so when you become pregnant, your whole endocrine system is like working overtime. All your hormones are changing. And I think that can make you feel a bit more tired than you normally are, just while your body's adjusting to this massive big change going on. So I also think breastfeeding, you need to rest, you need to slow down. And one of the beauties of breastfeeding is that when you're sitting there breastfeeding your child, it's the most peaceful, relaxing thing in the world, and you just have to take time. You can't rush it. That's the job you're doing. It's the most important thing you could be doing, and don't think you have to rush. Just take that time, rest, relax, and feed your child, and it's beautiful. And I fed on demand, so I fed whenever my children wanted feeding, and I found that time was really special. You bond with your child, but also the whole world has to slow down. Whatever's going on, whatever crazy stuff's happening, that focus on just, feeding your child is just beautiful. And that gives you a kind of resting period. You can't do anything else, just focus on that and that the time that you need to do that.
Of course. How about, you were talking about digestion and how faster it is. Did you feel any major differences, like non so positive, with digesting fruits? Because some people also worry about this. How am I going to digest this, and how is it going to affect my body?
I think the thing with fruit is it needs to be eaten by itself, not after other foods. And I think this is where a lot of issues come in, and people say, how can you eat all that fruit and not go to the toilet? How can you eat all that fruit and not feel like, you know, all this gas in your tummy? And I think a lot of that is that eat fruit before you eat other things. If you're not just eating fruit, eat your fruit meal first. So if you're just having one fruit meal a day, have breakfast as a fruit meal, because fruit does pass out of the system very quickly. Ripe melon can take maybe 10-15 minutes. Avocados and the heavier fruits such as bananas or dried fruits may take an hour, but they're still quicker than most processed and cooked foods. And so what happens is, if you eat like a heavy meal that's going to sit in your stomach for 4 hours, and then you eat fruit, the fruit wants to get through really quickly. It wants to get through and it can't, and it starts to ferment, and you can get gas and indigestion and issues. I also think if you change your diet to anything, when you change your diet, what's really important is your gut biome. And your gut biome is all the bacteria that live in your digestive system. And what you eat depends on what your gut biome will be. So if you eat a certain type of food, you'll have different types of bacteria in your guts. And if you change your diet, your gut biome will also change. And so there may be an adjustment period. If you've been eating a certain type of diet and then you change to a fruit diet, you may find that for a few days your stomach isn't feeling very good, or it is feeling a bit strange. And during that time, it's a transition time for your gut biome. The bacteria will be changing to more sort of healthy gut bacteria, but during the transition it can be, you know, maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but certainly the gut biome is very, very important. And if you have a healthy gut biome, you will find that you have less digestive issues. You will find that you digest fruit very well, and that you have good bowel movements, and that you don't have gas. And I think mono meals is another way that simplifies digestion. You're eating the same type of fruit, and it's the easiest diet on your digestive system. Eating mono as well also shows what works for you. It might be that a certain type of fruit doesn't work so well for you, and if you're just eating a meal of one fruit, then you'll be aware of what doesn't work for you, because after that meal you'll feel not so good, or you might have digestive issues, and you might think, well, you know, maybe pineapple doesn't work so well for me, or maybe green gages or plums don't work so well for me. And you can sort of tune in more easily to what works and what doesn't. If you're having a great big mixed meal of stuff and something's not right, it might be the mixing, or it might be one type of fruit, but it's hard to know what of the fruits it is if you've got a lot of different fruits that you're eating together.
Okay, thank you. Talking about fruits and also the savory fruits, would you add anything with it? Example, oil, salt, if you make a salad, or do you suggest not adding anything else? Herbs, spices?
Yeah, I think for me personally, I don't tend to add oil or salt. For me, salt doesn't work well at all. My body doesn't like salt. If I've ever had olives or sun-dried tomatoes with salt on, I found that I get quite puffy the next day. I retain water, and for me, that my body lets me know very clearly that salt doesn't work, so I don't add salt. I don't tend to add oil either. I'd rather have avocado if I want to have more fat in my diet. For me, avocado digests very well, it's very nutritious, and is more of a whole food than an extracted oil. Even an extra virgin olive oil, it's still just mainly fat, and it's also been processed in a way that an avocado hasn't been processed. So if I did want to mix fruits, I might just, you know, chop up some avocado. Maybe I'll put a bit of lemon on, maybe squeeze a bit of lemon on as a dressing, but not much else, and then we have some tomato. But in general, I like to eat mono, even with the savoury fruits, because if you've got a really good quality piece of fruit, I think eating it by itself does it total justice. Even a tomato, if you've got a really good, properly ripe, homegrown or heirloom tomato, eating it by itself, it's delicious, and the nuances, the layers of flavour. But if you get a tomato from the supermarket, it can taste like nothing. You know, but really good quality fruit stands alone. And that's another advantage to having mono meals, because you have to eat good quality. Some people might eat a piece of melon and say, well, this melon's not very tasty, but I'll mix it with a papaya and then it will taste okay. But if you just eat it by itself, you'll only eat fruit that tastes exceptional by itself, which means you're eating high quality, nutrient dense fruit, because it tastes good, it's properly ripe, and it's delicious by itself. So I do mostly eat mono. Even when I'm having savoury fruits, I'll have a bell pepper, and I'll just have a bell pepper, but it'll have to be a good one, or I'll just have an avocado, or I'll just have a cucumber. And people might think that's strange, but when you have good quality produce, I don't think you can improve it by mixing it with anything else. I just think, it stands alone. And that's another reason why I like eating mono, because it means you eat only really good quality fruit. You don't say, well, this isn't so good and that's not so good, but I'll mix it up and then maybe it'll taste okay. Because in the wild, animals, they eat mono. And if a monkey bit into a mango and it didn't taste good, it would spit it out, it would throw it away. It wouldn't think, well, I'll keep this mango and I'll mix it with something else, So I think optimally, it's really useful to eat mono.
Of course, and I think you bring up an issue of today's world. A lot of people have never tasted a nice fruit and what it tastes like, because when you buy from the shop, it has nothing to do with homegrown, for instance. And unless you've experienced that, you don't know. So that's why so many people think it's boring, for instance, to eat fruit.
Yes, yeah. But the experience of having really, really good quality fruit. At the moment in Australia, blood oranges are in season and they are exceptional. And they taste like oranges mixed with raspberries or mulberries. So you've got the best of the citrus mixed with the best of the berries. And I always think blood oranges are an exceptional fruit because they've got all the nutritional advantages of citrus mixed with all the nutritional advantages of berries. So they've got the vitamin C plus all the antioxidants and the pigments that you get in berries. Just a blood orange by itself is such an exceptional taste that I couldn't imagine mixing it, with anything else at all.
Of course. How about now, especially during pregnancy? So announcing to people you're pregnant is already something and can be challenging. But announcing to people you're pregnant and on a fruitarian diet, how do you deal with that? Or how could people deal with it?
Well, I think if you're healthy, that says a lot, because a lot of people are pregnant and they're not necessarily healthy. They get swollen ankles, they get backache, they get nausea, they're not happy and healthy. And I think, they're not able to be active. And I think if people see that you're healthy and that you're healthy with your pregnancy, they haven't really got so much to say. And if you say to them, look, I've had all my blood tests and I'm supplementing with B12 and my folic acid's great and my vitamin D's great and, my calcium's great and everything's fine and I'm eating well, and they see that you've got energy, I think people do have concerns, but I think you've got to have the knowledge. And I think this is where faith is important, but not blind faith. Faith that's built up by knowledge and research. And you can look at anatomy, you can look at physiology, you can look at nutrition, you can study these things, and you can get a good idea of what you need as a pregnant woman, what nutrients you need, and where you can get them in your fruit diet. So if somebody says to you, well, you can't possibly be pregnant, your baby will suffer because you're not getting this, you're not getting that, you're not getting this, you can say, well, actually, this is where I get so-and-so from, this is where I get that from. I feel my diet is very well balanced and my blood tests are good and, all my pregnancy checkups are fine. But, I appreciate your concern. But yes, of course, I want my baby to be very healthy, and every mother wants their baby to be healthy. And there will be some people that say you're being irresponsible if you're on a fruitarian diet and pregnant. But I think you can be irresponsible on any diet and pregnant if you're not giving your developing baby what that baby needs. And you can't just say, well, I'm on a fruitarian diet, everything's going to be fine. I think you've got to look what you're eating. Are you eating good quality produce? Are you feeling well? Are your blood tests good? Is your baby developing normally? And all that kind of stuff. And how are you feeling as well? How are you feeling? If you're feeling like you're so happy and healthy on your fruitarian diet while you're pregnant, and your blood tests are backing up you're getting what you need, and you're ensuring you're buying the best quality produce you can or growing your own, I think you have to have these strategies in place. And I think as well, it helps not to get defensive with people, because if you get defensive with people, and if you say, well, why don't you go and look at that person? They're overweight and they're pregnant, or they're not healthy and they're pregnant. Why are you picking on me? And if you get defensive, you're not hearing that person. But if you say to the person, if you use nonviolent communication, oh, it sounds like you're concerned that I'm not getting what I need, you know, maybe I can reassure you, or maybe I can share with you some information, then that person feels listened to, and feels that you're hearing them. Even if you don't agree with what they're saying, you know, but if you hear their concerns and try and answer in that way, I think that's very helpful. If you're doing any different type of diet and you're pregnant or you've got children, I think if your children are very healthy, my children have been very healthy, and I've had very few people criticising their diet, because they've seen that they're healthy and they're happy and they're developing well. And it's what really then can you say? A child could be healthy on a fruitarian diet, or they could be unhealthy. They could be healthy on an omnivorous diet, or they could be unhealthy. It depends what you're feeding them. And obviously being healthy and happy is not just about diet, but diet is probably one of the main factors in there. But I think you do have to have some kind of knowledge. You do have to look at nutrition, physiology, anatomy, so that you can have this faith in your diet that's not blind faith, because it's built on experience, it's built on knowledge, and it's built on some scientific background as well as how you feel. And I think, you know, that's the way to go. And reassess things every day. If you're not feeling good on a fruit diet in a pregnancy, if you feel you need more of this and that, assess it every day. Don't just think this is going to work and it's going to work for the next 9 months. You may need to change things, you may need to tweak things, and be open to do that, and be flexible in that. And if it works for you, that's great. If it's not and you need to add other foods, then be open, you know, to doing that, as long as it's ethically, you know, you're adding foods that are ethically suitable for you, then yeah.
Sure. So balance between following your intuition, how you feel, and also having the knowledge and education that actually and the health that goes with it, that makes you more confident to share in a way that is tangible.
Yeah. Because pregnancy really should be a beautiful, enjoyable, wonderful experience. And for me personally, that was possible on a fruitarian diet, and I feel very blessed that it was. And it shouldn't be a time that you're, you know, sort of being hard on yourself, or you're having regrets. And ideally, yes, do your research, do your knowledge before you're pregnant, and you know, ensure that you've got good levels of folic acid. If you're actually planning to be pregnant, that your B12 levels are good, vitamin D levels are good, and your blood tests are good, so that you can go into pregnancy in the best possible position. But, you know, that's if you find that you're pregnant and you're not in the best possible position, then you can make changes, you know, when you find out that you're pregnant, you know, and doing the best that you can.
Cool, thank you. How about the growth chart along your pregnancy, your baby growth? Was it like just average? Was it just like normal, or did you see any differences? And then the weight of your baby at birth, the whole growth of your baby along the pregnancy?
Yeah, I think during my pregnancy, all they measure your bumps and things, and everything was fine. I didn't put on a lot of weight. I put on about 10 kilos, but really your breasts get bigger, and the baby's growing, and you have, you know, extra sort of weight around your stomach area, but everything else didn't really grow and doesn't really need to grow. So yeah, I went from regular checkups and everything was always fine. I do think though that when babies are born, the growth rates can be different for those on a fruitarian diet, and I think foremost is breast milk is a food for children. Children aren't fruitarians, they're milkarians when they're born. They need good quality breast milk, and that's I think for 3.5 to 4 years, children still need milk. So I breastfed my children for 3.5 and 4 years, and I think that is really, really important. Obviously, when they're 4, they're not just going to be having breast milk. It's going to be more of a sort of supplement to the other foods they have, but I still think it's very important. And I think that's something that anybody that's considering bringing up a child on a fruitarian diet or a raw vegan diet needs to consider. Are you prepared to long-term breastfeed? because long-term breastfeeding isn't so usual in our society because we have dairy. If you go to societies where they don't have dairy animals and they don't domesticate animals in that way, you'll find that they usually do breastfeed for 4 years and the children are spaced out about every 4 years. And that doesn't happen so much because most people think that dairy, is the food for children rather than breast milk. But that's more of a cultural thing because we've gone away from breastfeeding. So you've got to think, am I prepared to breastfeed for 3.5, 4 years? What will that mean for me? Because I really do think children need that milk. And if you're not prepared to long-term breastfeed, what are you going to give them to replace that breast milk? I think that's very important to take into consideration with a pregnancy or considering a fruitarian pregnancy. Yeah.
Cool, that's a very good one, but it also brings up the subject of money, finances, how and work. What do you think to you? What would be the ideal position for a woman when she is breastfeeding for all those years, 3 to 4 years? What should, the ideal position in terms of work, or should she rely on someone to for a living? How would you consider this, or what would your suggestions be? That's very important.
Yeah. Well, it depends what your needs are and what's important to you. For me, it was very important. I was always there for my children, and I didn't put my children into daycare. That was my personal choice. I wanted to be with them, but I also wanted to work. So I had to think of a job that I could do so that I was there with my children when they needed me. And for me, massage worked really well. I worked from home as a massage therapist, so I qualified. I did a 2-year qualification in holistic therapies. And with my younger son, Cappy, he was very good. When he was 2 years old, I was able to work from home, and he would know that I was doing a massage, and I would explain to my clients, and that if it was important, he could knock on the door and he could come in, but he would just amuse himself for the hour when I was doing the massage. And I was quite surprised. I thought maybe I'll have to wait till he's 3 or 4 before I go back to doing massage. But when he was about 2, I was getting my old clients back and, doing massage from home, which was great. So I think it's about finding what works for you. Other people might want to do something online, have an online business. If you've got a partner, you may share the childcare with them. By the time a child's like 2.5, 3, they're not feeding as much. I didn't express milk, but some women choose to express milk so somebody else can feed their child. That's an option if that works for you. I think it's, finding what works for you and looking at strategies to make that possible. And I think now with more and more people working online, it's going to be there's going to be more opportunities for women who want to breastfeed long term, who want to stay at home with their children, to be able to do that and to sort of work around all the sort of things that you have to do as a woman, in terms of working, childcare, juggling it all, and also making sure that you have time for yourself and that you don't do too much. Because I think your priority probably is always your child and the wellness of your child, but I think you can start to do other work when it fits in for you, something online or something from home, or some women are very creative and they make things, and the sites like Etsy that they can sell, they can do work around their child. So yeah, and I think it's looking at what your needs are, what the needs of your child are, and looking at what's possible. And if you've got a partner that's going to help you, looking at how they can help you to do that and how you can share responsibility. Or if you're a single mother, it still is possible. It might be more challenging, but as a single mother, it is possible to work and look after a child at the same time. Yeah.
Definitely. I agree that the opportunities we have today with online work especially is very, very beneficial for women as well. Great. Other question, do you believe that if you choose this lifestyle, spending more time with your children, breastfeeding for longer period of time, you need to be more surrounded by family and friends and people helping you? Or do you think it's not a necessity?
I think having support is important, but it's not a necessity. With my elder son, I was a single parent. I think one thing, if you've got a child and they're very healthy and happy, it's a lot easier. And I found both my children were very healthy and happy. They didn't get sick. They weren't hyperactive. I could take them anywhere with me, and they were very calm and, well behaved. And that was a huge advantage, because that made it a lot easier when I was doing things on my own, because I could go to things, I could go to meetings, I could go out, and I would take my children, and they wouldn't run off. They would sit and they would be fine and they would be happy. And also having children that don't get sick and are very well makes life a lot easier. So I think that was a big advantage for me of bringing up my children on a fruitarian diet. But support is very important. But I think, I've been a single parent, and as long as I don't necessarily have to have a partner, but I think having some family and some friends, like with my elder son, my mother was very good support to me, and that was important. So even if you've got a mother or an auntie or a sister or somebody, you don't necessarily need to have a partner. If you have a partner, that's great, but that doesn't always work out for every woman. I think you've got to look at your individual circumstance, and we all need support. We all need human contact. We all need to be able to share, any concerns we have, or any frustrations. So it does help to have a good support network. And again, online's great, but it's nice to have somebody in person, that you trust and that you get on with, that you can talk about, your challenges you're having, because it is challenging bringing up children. It's beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing, but it also can be, challenging and very full on, even though it's a lovely job to have, So having a support network, I think, is really important when you have children. And playgroups, I was just going to say, playgroups are great. If you're a stay-at-home mother and you go to playgroups, with both my children, I used to go 2 or 3 times a week to playgroups. You get out the house, you meet with other women who know, or sometimes men as well, who know exactly what you're going through. All the kids can sit there and play, and even when they're babies, they'll look at the other babies. It's good socialisation for them, and just talking to other women who know exactly what you're going through, because they're doing it as well. So I think that's a really good thing to go through. If you've got young children and you're staying at home and they're not going into daycare or kindy, go to playgroups. Find local playgroups in your area. They're really, really good for support and just keeping you sane and well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Simple, but efficient. We'll finish with this one, I believe, transitioning. So if someone, I believe a lot of people hopefully will be interested in trying at least a diet, or to some extent, how do you suggest transitioning? Straight away, like radical, or step by step? Is it different according to people?
Some people do it straight away, but looking at a lot of people, they find that a transitional diet is very helpful. And certainly it was helpful for me, because I discovered the fruit diet when I was pregnant with my eldest son. I didn't want to go into it straight away because I didn't want to eliminate too much. And for me, that worked really well. Also, some of the pioneers of the fruit diet, such as Arnold Ehret and Essie Honorable, advocate going through a transitional diet if you can, and if that's what works for you, because your body gets used to it. It's more gradual. And for me, one of the great things about the transitional period was that I found what worked for me best, and I think it's helped me maintain the diet long term. So when I was in transition, sometimes I would eat all fruit for, say, 1 month, 2 months, just have fruit. Mostly fruit mono meals. And then I would maybe go through a period of having some cooked vegetables, but very simple, maybe a baked potato or a baked sweet potato in the evening, but still mostly fruit. And after a time, I realised that when I had the cooked food, my body odour changed. The taste in my mouth first thing in the morning changed. I didn't feel quite as good first thing in the morning. And I had those comparisons from the time when I was all on fruit, and then I'd have a bit of cooked food. And I noticed if I had cooked food more than twice in a row, I would notice those changes in my body odour, the taste in my mouth. I didn't feel quite as fresh in the morning. And for me, I was ready then, after the transitional period, to realise that I don't need these foods anymore and I don't feel so good on them. But it might differ. Somebody else might do a transitional period and be doing 80% raw, 20% cooked, and they might feel great on that, and then they might do 100% raw and they might feel just as good or better with some cooked food, and then that shows what works for you. For me, it really worked better doing all raw. I felt better, and I going through that transition allowed me to know and compare the state of 80% raw or 90% raw with 100%, and I knew that 100% for me worked well. And it gets your body, the transitional period gets your body used to the diet. And a lot depends on how you've lived previously. If you've had a pretty good diet, a pretty good whole food diet with very few allopathic medications, very few recreational drugs, you probably can go into a fruit diet more quickly because you've got less to eliminate. So if you've got stored toxins in your body and you go straight onto a fruit diet, it might be too much. The elimination might be too much and not optimal. You might need to slow it down through having some cooked foods, some baked potatoes or some steamed vegetables. Or you might feel too spacey on a fruit diet. And again, maybe some selectively cooked foods will help ground you. So personally, I recommend a transitional diet. But on the other hand, I know people that have gone straight onto the fruit diet and it's worked well for them. But I think you would need to be in a pretty good state of health and maybe have been on a whole food diet for a while. If you've been on a very processed diet and had a lot of drugs or medication, then I would ease into a fruit diet and maybe have fruit for breakfast. Start off by having all fruit for breakfast and see how that goes. Then maybe have 2 fruit meals a day. And the way I did it was eat more and more fruit and less cooked food. And at the end of like a year, I was ready to let go of the cooked food. That might not be the same for you, but for me, I was ready to let it go. And I think succeeding long term on a fruitarian diet was, partly helped by having that transitional period. But, everybody's different. But certainly the works of Arnold Ehret and Essie Honorable are very useful for people, I think, who want to transition to a fruit diet because they talk a lot about transitional diets and, tips for transitioning.
Great, thank you. Do you think any body type, any type of people can go through it, even those who have, for instance, some type of illnesses or diabetes? Can they still try it, or is it better for them not to?
Well, I've known people that have been type 1 diabetics and have been on a fruit diet. For them, I think they had to be careful with dried fruit and they had to, monitor their blood sugar levels. But certainly people can go on a fruit diet. I wouldn't recommend a lot of dried fruit or seedless fruit. I think you would have to be mindful of what you ate and how it affected your blood sugar levels. But the people that I've known that have been diabetic, type 1 diabetics, have certainly been able to be on a raw vegan diet or a fruitarian diet. But they had to be mindful that they, weren't having too much concentrated sugar in things like dried fruits or maybe, seedless fruits that tend to be high in sugar and low in minerals. With type 2 diabetes, a lot of people can actually, recover from type 2 diabetes by changing their diet and maybe changing their weight, changing their diet and lifestyle can really help with that. I think, again, monitor how you're doing. And everybody is slightly different. I believe that we all are frugivorous by design. I believe we all have the body of a frugivore. But there's epigenetic changes. So what our parents ate, what our grandparents ate, what our great-great-grandparents ate will all affect us and our genetic makeup and how we respond to things. And it's like B12, for instance. I've known people that have been on a fruitarian diet for years and years and have never supplemented with B12 and yet have exhibited no deficiency symptoms. I've known other people who've done it for 18 months and become B12 deficient. So it seems that some people are able to produce and absorb their own B12 from their bodies while other people aren't. And that might be a genetic thing. So I think there are differences between us. There's a lot of similarities. So we do need to look at our individual needs. We may need to supplement B12. We may not. We may need to, supplement other minerals. And a lot depends on the state of our digestive system and assimilation. If you've had a pretty good diet and lifestyle and your gut biome is healthy and your villi, which are the little projections in your gut that absorb nutrients, if they're healthy, you may find that you can transition quite easily to a fruitarian diet and you can absorb and assimilate all that you need. If you've had issues with, Crohn's disease, or you've taken a lot of allopathic medicine or recreational drugs, and your villi and gut biome are compromised, you may find that you can't assimilate as easily as another person from a fruit diet. You may need to eat more, and that's another reason why we need to look at individual needs. One person may need to eat 3,000 calories a day, while another eats 1,500 and does very well. And it's not just calories going in, it's what's happening in our bodies in terms of assimilation that's really important, because the first person may be assimilating, who needs to eat 3,000 calories, maybe only assimilating 20% of what they're eating. But the person that is eating 1,500 calories maybe is assimilating 80% because their digestive system is so much more effective. So that can be something to take into consideration during transition. If you find you're losing a lot of weight eating fruit, it may be that you're not able to assimilate it. It may mean that you need to do some digestive healing. And when that healing's done, then you'll find you will assimilate fruit a lot better, and you will be able to eat less to maintain your weight and energy levels. So always looking at our individual needs, and what works for one person may not work for you, and that's okay. There's no rights and wrongs. You're on your own path, and you need to find, what works for you while you're on that path.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anne. We'll stop it from here. Have a very good day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.